The seatbelt light flickered on, casting a soft amber glow across the cabin. The hum of the engines was steady, almost comforting. Passengers shifted in their seats, pulling out books, scrolling through phones, adjusting pillows for the long flight ahead. In seat 13F by the window sat a woman in her late 30s. Her hair was tied back in a loose knot, a pair of plain aviator sunglasses resting atop her head. She looked like any other traveler. Casual jeans, a soft gray hoodie, a small leather bag tucked under the seat in front of her. Nobody noticed her at first. That was how she liked it. Somewhere over the clouds, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we may experience a bit of turbulence ahead. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." It was a standard announcement, but to those who'd flown enough, there was something in his tone, tight, controlled, but a shade too careful. The woman in 13 and F lifted her eyes from the paperback she was pretending to read and glanced out the window. The air outside looked calm, but she knew better. Her instincts, honed over years of combat missions, whispered that something was off. 15 minutes later it happened. The seatbelt light blinked, the mystery passenger in 13 Fagin, followed by a pause, then the distant roar of engines not belonging to their airliner. Several passengers glanced outside and gasped. Two dark shapes streaked toward them through the thin cloud layer, sharp silhouettes against the pale sky. F-22 Raptors, murmurs filled the cabin. A child pressed her face to the glass and pointed. "Mom, fighter jets." A man twirls up frowned, muttering, "What the hell's going on?" The jets closed in fast, leveling just off the wingtips. The lead Raptor tilted slightly, its canopy glinting in the sun. The captain's voice came back quieter this time. Ladies and gentlemen, we have some unexpected company. Everything is under control. Please remain calm." The woman in 13F didn't move. She just kept looking out, her face unreadable. Then, through the cabin's muffled quiet, the captain's next words slipped in, barely audible to the passengers near the front, but picked up by the woman's trained ears. "Tower, confirm passenger manifest. Is this Falcon 1 on board?" Her jaw tightened. It had been years since she'd heard that name, years since she'd worn the patch that went with it. She turned her head slightly, her eyes narrowing on the Raptors. A beat later, the radio chatter, unintelligible to the rest, came alive in her head like muscle memory. She could almost hear the young voice of the F-22 pilot as he called Iden. "Raptor lead to civilian flight 207. Confirm Falcon 1 in seat 13F. The captain hesitated, then replied, "Affirmative." "She's here." Something changed instantly. The F-22s drew closer, and in a move that baffled every passenger watching, both pilots lifted their gloved hands in salute. A slow, deliberate motion, a gesture not for the plane, but for the woman inside it. Gasps and whispers rippled through the cabin. People turned in their seats, craning their necks toward 13F. She kept their gaze forward, the corners of her mouth pressing into the faintest, most private smile. It was only then that the man sitting beside her leaned over, voice low. "Who are you?" She didn't answer. Not yet. Hours earlier at the airport, she had slipped through security like a shadow, wearing nothing that drew attention. She traveled light. No checked bag, no laptop, no visible military gear. Her boarding pass said E. Carter. The name meant nothing to anyone. That was the point. She hadn't flown commercial in years. But today wasn't about her. It was about a promise. A silent one she'd made to a fallen friend. A pilot she'd once saved in a firefight over a desert no tourist would ever see. She was on her way to his hometown for a memorial nobody outside their world knew about. Back in the present, the captain requested permission for the Raptors to escort them through restricted airspace. For the next half hour, the fighters stayed alongside silent sentinels. Passengers kept sneaking glances at 13F. Whispering theories, CIA, famous politician, maybe even royalty. When the jets finally peeled away, dipping wings one last time, she allowed herself to exhale. She reached into her small leather bag and pulled out a worn, folded photograph. 4 pilots in flight suits standing on a sun-baked runway. The fourth figure herself stood with arms crossed, helmet tucked under one arm, grinning. The call sign Falcon 1 was stenkled just above her name. She remembered the day it was taken. The mission had been dangerous, worse than anything they'd been briefed for. When it went wrong, She had flown into enemy fire to pull out 2 downed pilots holding formation under a hail of tracers. She'd taken a hit to her own aircraft, limped it back to friendly airspace, and landed on fumes. The story of F-22's approach to the civilian flight had become legend in certain circles. To everyone else, it never happened. By the time Flight 207 touched down, word had somehow spread. Airport personnel lined the edge of the tarmac, some standing straight, some with hands over hearts. As she stepped off the jet bridge, a pair of young Air Force officers waited. One snapped to attention. "Saluting, ma'am," he said quietly. "It's an honor. My father flew with you. You saved his life." She returned the salute with crisp precision, then turned toward the terminal, disappearing into the crowd. She hadn't come for recognition. She'd come for the promise. That night at the small-town memorial, she stood at the edge of a candle-lit field, watching the sky burn with the last streaks of sunset. Nobody there called her by her real name. They called her Falcon 1. And for a moment she allowed herself to feel the weight of it, not as a burden, but as the quiet pride of someone who had given everything and asked for nothing in return. Somewhere in the distance, the faint rumble of jet engines echoed. She lifted her head toward the sound and smiled. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe.